and I'm going to ask for Senator Reynolds to join us. Senator Reynolds.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Well, thank you, President. First and valedictory speeches are the bookend to our parliamentary careers, and I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunity to do this valedictory speech tonight, to have the opportunity to reflect on the things that I'm so proud to have delivered in this place, and also to thank the many people, many of whom are here tonight, who have helped me along the journey. I'm also very grateful to be leaving the Senate at a time of my own choosing, an opportunity I'm very well aware not all members and senators have. But let me be very clear about one thing. While I am leaving at a time of my choosing, the timing of my choosing has been expedited, and expedited by events that are well known to all in this place. Those events have inflicted deep wounds on so many. However, my wounds do not define who I am. They have not distracted me for a second from what I was elected to do here as a senator and member. But they have made me stronger and they have made me wiser. But more on that later. None of us succeed in this place on our own. We are at our best in this place when we collaborate to deliver meaningful and important reforms for our nation. And it is a real shame that more Australians don't get to see this dirty little secret of ours about how much we do actually work together across the aisle in this place. But I've got so many people to thank, which I will do at the end. But I do just have a few acknowledgements up front. Foremost to my family, my partner Robert, my father Laith, my brother Andrew and his partner Angela, and his daughters Octavia and Anastasia. To my mother Jan, who is so desperately sad that she could not be here tonight, but she is watching from home in Perth. And to you, Mum, I say thank you and I love you. But I am somewhat comforted that my brother Cameron, his wife Charlotte, and his two daughters Olivia and Sophie will be with her this evening. As senators, we choose this life, but our families are conscripts. And I think it's safe to say that it's never really been that easy sometimes to be related to me. I've got to say, what those opposite did to me was so brutal and so deliberate. But they also did it to my family and my partner. And for that, I am so deeply sorry that my career choice has done so much damage to those that I love the most. I'm also more grateful than I could ever express that so many friends, staff and colleagues are here tonight. And I know many more are watching online. I've received the photos of the screen on with the glasses of wine in front later. And I know, and many of you here tonight know, that it's not always been easy being my friend either. And for that I'm so deeply grateful that year after year you have kept showing up to support me and be my friend. My staff are simply spectacular, but I'll have much more to say about you a bit later on. My journey into the Senate was not a particularly smooth one. In 2012, after long and successful careers in both the Army and in the Liberal Party, I was deeply honoured to be pre-selected by the WA Liberal Party as a Senate candidate. Service defines who I am and what I do, and it always will. In my early 20s, I found my philosophical and ideological roots in the Liberal Party, as well as lifelong friends, many of whom are in the chamber here and also in the gallery this evening. I am a Menzies Liberal. I draw on both philosophical traditions of our great party. I'm as equally comfortable with supporting same-sex marriage as I am with boat turnbacks and rearming our nation in preparation for war. I've never been a member of a party faction. I understand them, but I find them distracting and often destructive. I left the Army as Adjutant General, the Senior Governance Advisor with responsibility for reforming Army's compliance and assurance processes to assure capability and the safety of our people. So after 35 years of military and political service, I felt very well prepared to serve my state and my country in the Senate. But it almost was not to be. After the great excitement of being elected in 2013, the election was voided by the High Court as the AEC had lost the princely sum of 1,375 ballot papers. And Senator Cash remembers that well. But as third on our Senate ticket, I almost lost in the 2014 Senate election rerun. And then I was referred to in the media as one of the unluckiest people in Australian politics. And I've got to say, after the experience of the past 4 years, one could be forgiven for thinking that maybe they were right. But nothing could be further from the truth. Being elected to serve in the Senate is such a rare privilege, a privilege that comes with great responsibilities, but also great opportunities to do wonderful things for our nation. And I've never lost sight of that, not once, not ever. Since Federation, I'm the 569th of only 648 Australians who have served in this place. I'm the 87th of 125 women who have served in the Senate. And I'm the 90th West Australian and the 5th Liberal woman from Western Australia. And at the last election in 2019, I had the great privilege of leading the WA's party's Senate ticket. And in my first speech, at that bookend, I focused on the themes of democracy, of leadership, of change and of gender. They are all causes that I have consistently and passionately pursued in this place, both as a senator and as a minister. And in that first speech, I also reflected on the values that underpinned my approach to life and to work. The dominant value being respect, which I learnt from my parents very early in life. Self-respect, respect for others, respectful compassion and support for those who genuinely need it. But also respectful but tough actions against those who ruthlessly exploit the compassion and the vulnerability of others and those who seek to do us harm. And on reflection, the most important lesson I take away from this place is the need to constantly recalibrate your own moral compass. We must be vigilant in here in ensuring it remains always pointing true north. I have Army to thank for instilling this practice in me. And by constantly doing so, it has made it possible for me to navigate through some of the most challenging circumstances, and it has made complex moral decisions far easier. It also made the challenging issue of leadership challenges, of which I went through 3, a relative breeze. My motto was, you always support the leader unless there is serious conduct. And if you support the leader, you walk with them to the spill. Now, I'm proud I walked twice with the leader. But today, on reflection, I must confess I have some degree of buyer's remorse for the second. Since my early 20s, I've worked in this building in very many different capacities. So when I came in, I really thought that I had a good handle on what to expect as a senator. However, the past 11 years have far exceeded my initial expectation in so many really wonderful and often challenging ways. I've had the privilege to serve in 2 constitutional roles, in the legislature and in executive government, and I'll address each in turn. But there was never any doubt in my mind that if I was going to put my hand up for federal parliament, it would be for the Senate. I have such a deep respect for the Senate and its role in maintaining the strength and stability of our democracy. But it's in the committees that I found my greatest joy and purpose in the Senate. I counted it up, or actually one of my staff members counted it up, and I've been a member of 30 different committees, many of them on multiple occasions. I've chaired and deputy chaired 7 and participated in hundreds of inquiries. I'm proud of all of the inquiries and the reports that I've put my name to. But sometimes you're a little prouder of some than others. And I think in this place we always have that moment where we realise the power that we possess to champion causes and change so many lives for the better. There are no topics off limit for senators, but we do have to choose which ones we pursue and for how long we pursue them. Now, that realisation came to me when I learnt that thousands of young Australians with serious and permanent disabilities were forced to live in aged care. There was simply nowhere else for them to live. And I'm so proud that the resulting inquiry, the report itself, was implemented. It's taken time, but thousands upon thousands of those people are now living with support and dignity in the community. And in fact, my very last committee report was tabled today. It was the second Community Affairs Committee inquiry into tick bite diseases. Now, I had promised Senator Rachel Siewert at her own valedictory that I would continue the fight for justice for the thousands of Australian victims of tick bites who are so disgracefully and shamefully treated by the medical profession. And I now ask my fellow senator to take on the challenge and to keep the fight going for those people. Sometimes as well, issues just come across your desk, ones that you actually know very little about, but when you look at it, you just know there is something not right. There is something a little bit stinky. Now, one such issue was the sudden axing of the Western Force Club from Super Rugby by the Australian Rugby Union. This devastated fans, players, their families and their club. Now, I couldn't even identify a rugby ball. Sorry to some of my friends up there, but I still can't after all of these years. But they were completely devastated, could not understand why it happened. So as the sport was partially federally funded, I sponsored a Senate inquiry. Now, we did get answers for fans and the team, but unfortunately the Australian Rugby Union was never held accountable for their many quite questionable actions that sat behind that reason. But committees in this place can also lead us to very unexpected places. And over time, I, like I'm sure all of my colleagues here, come to realise that sometimes to solve or address some of the issues that we deal with go well beyond our own national borders. For me, one such issue is tackling modern slavery. This is a crime that exists not just overseas, but one that is hidden in plain sight right across Australia. And as a Liberal, there is no more important freedom for us to fight for than the freedom from slavery and servitude. And as a direct result of my work in this place on tackling trafficking and slavery, I now lead global reforms on child trafficking and forced labour, particularly orphanage trafficking. Now, this journey began in 2016 with 2 parliamentary study programs. The first was a CPA UK-sponsored parliamentary education program for Commonwealth MPs on how to tackle modern slavery in legislation. Now, the second was on a Save the Children parliamentary study tour to Cambodia. And this is where I learnt that Australian donors and donors from many other countries and volunteers had inadvertently created a trade in children to satisfy their need and desire to help poor children. It's hideous. But the inquiry report that we initiated when we returned, called Hidden in Plain Sight, recommended the introduction of modern slavery legislation in Australia. But significantly, the report also recognised orphanage trafficking as a form of modern slavery, and we were the first country to do so. And one of the proudest moments in my ministerial career was when, as Assistant Minister for Home Affairs, I carried the legislation through the Parliament. And since that time, I've worked on developing global partnerships to implement global reforms to stop orphanage trafficking and to reunite over 5 million children who've been trafficked from their families, to reunite them back with their families. These efforts are coordinated through the Orphanage Trafficking Working Group that I chair at a DC-based Interparliamentary Task Force on Human Trafficking. I'm in this for the long haul. Unfortunately, in this speech, I can't completely avoid dealing, at least in part, with what I now refer to as the plan. I have never disputed, not once, Brittany Higgins' claim about what happened in my office in the early hours of one Saturday morning. Brittany Higgins and David Shiraz developed a political #MeToo plan based on a simple but very powerful lie. A lie that has now resulted in the longest and largest political scandal in our nation's history, and one is well into its 5th year. Brittany always knew the truth. Justice Lee dealt with this in his judgment, where he sets out the false representations and false warranties given in her settlement deed. And Justice Lee said this: "What is notable about Ms Higgins' account of a cover-up or victimisation allegation is not only in its inconsistency with the contemporaneous records and its falsities, particularly as to Ms Higgins dealing with Ms Brown, but also its imprecisions and reliance upon speculation and conjecture." He also said this: "Putting what occurred at this meeting on the 1st of April and the events of the preceding days together, a clear picture emerges, but it is entirely at odds with the notion of an attempt being made to cover up an allegation by discouraging it to be reported to the police." Now, the moment Labor's leadership made the conscious decision to politically weaponise Ms Higgins' allegations, my life and that of so many others were changed forever. And every human being, no matter how strong you are, has a breaking point. Labor deliberately and oh so very surgically and relentlessly found mine, whatever it took. That type of persistent and aggressive personal attack would never be tolerated in any other workplace in this country. Labor so badly wanted the allegations that a female cabinet minister and a Prime Minister had covered up the rape of a young woman. They so badly wanted it to be true, they didn't actually care if it was true or not, I believe. But consequently, as a result of their actions, Labor failed to exercise any proper judgment or independence before becoming so publicly involved in perpetuating a story that Justice Lee described as insufficiently scrutinised and factually misconceived conjecture. I never wanted to sue Brittany or David, but ultimately I was left with no choice, and I've been asked why I did it. Once the Attorney-General barred me from defending these highly defendable workplace allegations, he left me with no other alternative but to fight for the truth and for justice under defamation law. The Commonwealth's conduct in the swift settlement with Brittany sent a clear and a very unequivocal message to the nation that these demonstrable lies were in fact true. This enabled me to continue to be grossly defamed. And as a senator in this place, I had to fight for my and my staff and my family's reputation. And people ask why. But if in the Senate, if in this chamber, if we don't fight for the truth and justice, where on earth in Australia do we fight for it? I had no choice. Of course I had to fight. Now, once Justice Toddle has delivered his judgment, then I will have a lot more to say about this. However, I'll conclude on this matter by saying this. In the next Parliament, it is my great hope that all parties can come together to agree on how we set the standard in this place and calibrate it so it is the same standard that we legislate for every other workplace in this country. To do that, to set the standard, we also, not we, it won't be we anymore, but those in this chamber will have to agree where robust and privileged debate finishes and where inappropriate workplace behaviours and bullying starts. The abuse of parliamentary privilege is no longer acceptable. Scott Morrison appointed me to several portfolios over his tenure as Prime Minister, and I am incredibly grateful for the opportunities that he gave me. Emergency management, defence industry, defence, the NDIS and government services. Scott and I spent much time together in 2019 and 2020 visiting a range of natural disasters across this country. And what I saw in him was a leader who had great empathy and demanded decisive action for those in urgent need. And what he saw in me then as Emergency Management Minister, he also saw in me as Defence Minister. We may have had our differences on occasion, but when I collapsed in this place, Scott rushed over to the ante-room and he was so incredibly kind. He sat with me for over an hour while I was sobbing hysterically and completely incoherently. But he sat there, he looked after me, and throughout my recovery, he stayed in contact with me and my doctor. And when others were baying for my head, he kept me in cabinet, which gave me a new purpose, it gave me a new challenge, and it gave me hope. And what happened to me also happened to him and to his family. He was also a target of the plan, of the lie. So, Scott, I thank you for your service to the nation and for your stewardship of this nation through the COVID-19 pandemic. Your leadership and the decisions you took saved tens of thousands of Australian lives and millions of jobs and thousands of companies. So I thank you for that. It was an extraordinary time in these portfolios, but time doesn't permit me to address them all tonight. But Scott and I had a shared understanding of what our nation needed for its defence, and together we delivered it. A defence strategic update and an accompanying force structure plan, the budget to fund it, new agreements with the United States. I signed a new agreement with NATO, and with some of the people in the chamber tonight, we set this country on the pathway towards nuclear submarines. I came into the defence portfolio well prepared after a long career in the Army as a senior officer, having worked at higher headquarters and having completed a Masters in Strategic Studies at the War College. But it was very clear to both Scott and me that we were facing a higher risk and rapidly changing strategic landscape, the worst since World War II. And not long after becoming Minister, I gave a keynote speech at the Hudson Institute in Washington, DC. And I started with the observation that the rules-based order we've lived in since the end of World War II is no more, and it was not coming back. Sadly, that has proved to be true. But alarmingly, the threat has only increased since then. Now, that is due in large part to not just China, but to the new axis of convenience: China, Russia, North Korea and Iran. The brutal reality we very rarely discuss in this place is that we have a four-nation axis of dictatorship and authoritarianism that have a shared enemy, and that is democracy, and that is us. This axis is rapidly expanding its political and military spheres of influence. All of these regimes have nuclear capabilities. They exert brutal control over their over their citizens. They have no regard for human life, and they have a shared hatred of democratic values. Now, this axis has already progressed from non-kinetic to kinetic war in 2 theatres of war, with Russia in Ukraine, and Iran in Israel and the Red Sea, with the support of his proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthi. I'd like to acknowledge the Ukrainian ambassador who joins us here this evening. He has been an astonishing advocate for his nation, and I think I'm in complete awe of the work that you do. For the family and the friends that you have lost yourself, and for seeing your country under such relentless attack. But can I also acknowledge that the bravery of the Ukrainian people, and as I've said many times in this place, their war is our war. Absolutely, their war is our war, and we need to be doing far more to help Ukraine defeat Russia. And I know there's a lot of discussions going on globally at the moment, but as I've said in here, in a much longer speech, is that appeasement of Russia will not work. The United States appeased Russia 10 years ago and gave them Crimea. They won't take anything more until they did. But it's not just Russia. China has a vice-like grip on the South China Sea and is well advanced in its preparations to cross the Taiwan Strait. North Korea continues to advance its nuclear and long-range strike capabilities. They're providing ballistic missiles to Russia, and they are gazing oh so longingly over the DMZ. Now, what this axis has over us at the moment is that they understand the benefits of shared industrial and military alliances and materiel alliances to achieve what they cannot on their own. And they're not just doing it, the 4 of them anymore, they're doing it with many BRICS members who are not even hedging their bets anymore, they've just jumped ship. Now, as a West Australian senator, I've been aware for many years that China has also been quietly and persistently manipulating critical minerals and rare earth commodity markets globally. They've done this to stockpile offtake and monopolise processing. This, combined with the CCP's prolific use of slave, forced and bonded labour, provides China with an overwhelming economic advantage in the new energy technology sectors. This is something that those opposite know only too well. But it is inconceivable that anybody in this nation would choose a solar panel or a wind turbine or an electric vehicle over human life. And we have to find ways in this place to deal with both, to stand up for human life while we transition to net zero. In 1942, Robert Menzies observed in one of his many forgotten people speeches that Australians take a great many things for granted, which I think was just as true then in 1942 as it is now. And one of the most important things we take for granted is the health of our democracy. We have forgotten as a nation what it takes to preserve and strengthen our democracy. How do we strengthen the institutions that prop up our democracy? But I don't see yet a catalyst for change. And that is one of the next things, again, unfinished business for me, but that is one of the things that we need to review. In both my military and my civilian careers, I've had not just command positions, but I've led 3 successive reform projects that deliver change, and change that has stuck. So I know that change is never easy, but it is always possible. Now, during COVID-19, we demonstrated in this place, and the government demonstrated, we can do things quickly. We can get things done quickly. We can create vaccines. We can get the public servants to get money out the door the next day. We can do things. But if identifying problems was an Olympic sport, Australia would lead the gold medal tally. We have endless royal commissions, we have inquiries, we have reviews. We inquire into hundreds of issues every year in this place. But their recommendations are rarely, if ever, fully implemented, if at all. And being Deputy Chair of the Joint Committee of Public Accounts and Audit, every single report for decades says the same things over and over and over. We make policy, we implement legislation, but little of it actually gets implemented effectively. Now, there's a lot of discussion and debate, particularly in the United States. Now, I'm a transformative Conservative. I'm not a radical one. So I don't believe that the radical destruction of the status quo will automatically result in the delivery of better outcomes. It will certainly tear down underperforming institutions, but we need more than that. We need a plan for how we rebuild. For what we cut or what we remove, how are we actually going to make what we replace it with far more efficient and effective with the taxpayers' money? Now, just to finish off a couple of ministerial observations. One of the greatest joys of my time in this place was being Minister for the NDIS. Now, the NDIS is a fundamentally liberal insurance scheme. It is not a welfare scheme. It is designed to help Australians with the most serious and permanent disabilities to provide them with dignity and the ability to realise their own life choices and aspirations. But that is not the scheme it is today. My greatest regret then as Minister for NDIS is that 4 years ago I was unable to convince Bill Shorten and Labor to work with me and the government to reform the serious structural problems that has made it unsustainable. There were no shortcuts then, and there are even fewer 4 years later. The fundamental problem is that as an insurance scheme, the Commonwealth Government is powerless to control either lever of an insurance scheme, the number of participants and the cost per participant. And until we can get control of that and the intergovernmental agreements are completely reformed, the scheme, unfortunately, is on a trajectory to failure. And that would be one of the greatest probably the biggest public policy failure of our generation. So after the election, all parties need to find a way to come together to take the tough decisions to ensure that this scheme survives, but for those for whom it was designed. One event I'd like to share with you and everybody in the chamber is probably one of the most special and extraordinary events I've encountered. We all have these things that just delight, surprise and fill you with joy. In 2021, when the Taliban had returned to Kabul, Australia joined like-minded countries and formed a temporary evacuation air bridge out of the Hamid Karzai airport. I'd contacted my friend, a former Afghan politician, Shukira Barakazai, to see if she was okay and she needed help leaving. She told me she was fine, but I afterwards found out that she wasn't. But she wanted me to help a young journalist, Khalid Amiri, and his family, who had been hunted by the Taliban, and they needed help to get out. I made contact with Khalid on Twitter at the time, and the most extraordinary series of events followed over the next several days. Hundreds of WhatsApp between us as he and his family were navigating the streets of Kabul in burqas to hide their identities. But thanks to Maurice and her team, we got them visas. They managed to get to the sewers of Abbey Gate with thousands and thousands of other desperate Afghans. And then there was silence. And silence. But then, wonderfully, in question time, I received a message from Khalid, and he sent me a photo right from the wall at Abbey Gate. And I could see the back of two Marines sitting on the wall. I asked him to hand his phone to me to see whether the Marine would talk to him and whether I could convince that Marine that they were Australians, they had visas, and we wanted them to come to Australia. And wonderfully, this Marine, whose name I can't mention, who has been thanked, came on the phone. He knew lots of Aussies from the Marine Corps, so he recognised the accent. And he took Khalid over the wall with his family and dropped them off at the Australian collection point. The rest is now history. Khalid and his family, 16 in total, are now settled in Melbourne, and they are great Australians. They're studying, they're working, their daughters go to school, have ambitions and have a life in front of them. Khalid has just finished his Masters at Melbourne University and is now winning awards as a voice for his people, particularly for young women. But it does remind me that in this place, we can't save everybody, but we can save some. And I think that's why we do what we do in this place. So as I prepared this speech and worked out who I had to thank, there were many. But I also realised that as I was thinking about who I had to thank, I realised that my overwhelming feeling was one of immense gratitude to so many people. Firstly, to the people of Western Australia who elected me to represent them, 4 times in fact. I hope I have done you proud. To the Liberal Party, my philosophical home for nearly 40 years. I've made so many friends over that time, and so many of them are here tonight. There are far too many of you to thank individually, but you know who you all are and what you mean to me. I also thank my West Australian colleagues, many of whom are here tonight, and our leader. We, as West Australians, we are one mighty team. We are united in our passion and our commitment for Western Australia, so ably led by Michaelia Cash, who is such a wonderful West Australian. She's a strong leader, and I thank you for your leadership of our team. We've still got a mighty job ahead of us now to win enough seats so that, Peter, you become Prime Minister. And we are in that 100%. I'd also like to acknowledge Sir Linton Crosby and Lady Crosby. Linton gave me my first big job in the Liberal Party, and through Linton, he saw something in me and he gave me so many opportunities, and I received such a wonderful mentorship over many years. And it means a lot to me that you're both here tonight, so thank you for everything that you have done and for your friendship. To my army mates, who are many here this evening, it is a very, very special bond we have, and it means a great deal to me that you are here tonight. And I'm sure there will be a few wines sort of to celebrate after that, but I am very grateful, thank you. To my very special friends, Heather and Danielle, you couldn't be here tonight, but you have been wonderful, loyal friends and champions. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you do for so many women in the Liberal Party, including me. You are incredibly generous with your time and your money. I'm truly blessed to have had so many amazing friends in and out of this place. Again, many of you are here, and I thank you for that. Unfortunately, Maurice couldn't be here tonight, and I want to give a special thanks to Maurice. And to Maurice and to Anne. You know, they say sometimes this building is a very lonely place, and it can be desperately lonely. But when the chips are down and when you can't defend yourself or look after yourself, having people here who drop everything. They rally around you, they lift you, they support you, and they make sure you're okay. And for that, I cannot, and Jane and many others in here, but I cannot say thank you enough. You are the reason I'm still standing here today. I'm blessed with the most amazing staff, both in my electorate and ministerial offices. I owe an enormous debt of gratitude to you all. One I know I will never be able to repay, but I hope in some way that you take great pride in the work that you have done and the experiences that you have gained. But I am sorry that for a number of you, your choice of workplace, working for me, was not always a safe one. You too have been subject to behaviours that would be unacceptable in any other workplace. A tsunami of hatred directed at me via every possible communications medium. And for that, I thank you. Again, there are no suitable words. To Michelle Lewis, who's been my EA and office manager for 11, what I'm sure she feels are very long years. And it's wonderful to see James Smith, who organised my life so beautifully as Minister for Defence. I thank you for the care you took in ensuring that I was always where I needed to be and always perfectly turned out. But with Michelle, saying your job has not always been easy is an understatement. And I'm more grateful than I can say for your leadership, your friendship and your carriage of our mighty team. And I'm sorry for the burdens that you've also had to carry. To my current team, Ashley, Josh, Kyle, Charles and Matt, thank you for your amazing contributions you continue to make. They are incredibly valued and you are all highly respected for your professionalism, just as a number of former staff here who have gone on to much bigger and better things in many different careers. So to all of my ministerial staff, I say thank you. My extraordinarily talented and committed teams, ministerial teams, were so ably led by Fiona Brown, by Scott Dewar, Alex Kelton and Darren Disney, and of course Dean Carlton, Alex's mighty deputy. Leading ministerial offices is never easy, particularly in cabinet portfolios where you have ministers with big portfolio ambitions. I'm grateful for all of your hard work and I hope, as I said, you're all rightly proud of your contributions. We don't often in this place thank enough the thousands of staff that keep the engine room, our building, the engine room of democracy going. There are thousands of staff who keep this place operating, from the wonderful attendants in this chamber, the black rod, the clerk, the cleaners, the gardeners, the drivers, the printers, the caterers, the researchers, the guides, and so many more. We don't say it often enough, but thank you. Now, I may also be the first senator ever to thank their lawyers and their doctors. So this might be a first. So firstly to Ashley Sakalos and his team at Clayton Utes. Over the past 4 years, you have supported me through a defamation case, a criminal trial, a judicial inquiry into the criminal trial, a civil workplace claim, multiple defamation claims and 2 NAC referrals. Your compassion, your professionalism and your sheer endurance has kept me going through these never-ending proceedings. So thank you. Inadequate as it is again, but thank you. Now to Martin Bennett and his amazing team, Rachel, Talisha, Andrew and Cindy. You have supported me now through several separate defamation actions, including the defamation case we're awaiting the verdict for. But I'm so grateful that they have been so thorough in piecing together the detail of the plan. There are thousands and thousands of documents now that just demonstrate exactly how this plan was developed and executed. And I'm very grateful that you have brought to light the truth, which has given me great peace, and I know many others, in terms of having finally having their voices heard. So having you in my corner has been life-changing in so many ways. Now to my doctors. To both Dr Antonio De Dio and my cardiologist, Professor Abaratna. I'm sorry, I always mispronounce it. This patient thanks you for your medical care and the patience you have shown me along this medical journey, often with it playing out in the national media and in the courts. So I thank you. As I said at the very beginning, my family means everything to me in ways that words cannot capture. But I know you know how much I love you and how much I care for you all. But I'm also incredibly grateful for the hundreds, if not thousands, of random acts of kindness that I and my team have received from total strangers who send these most wonderful messages. It has made all of the difference, and it just reminds us that there is great good out there and there are good people in the community. But my final and most heartfelt thanks is to Robert. I'm so very grateful for the love and unconditional support, particularly over the past 4 years. It has been unimaginably tough for you. You have had to fight your own battles as well as mine, but you have never taken a step away from my side. And for that I love and thank you. We all leave this place with unfinished business. I certainly do. My colleagues will not be surprised to learn that I have already written to various ministers, shadow minister and colleagues with some detailed briefing notes on the reforms that are still to be delivered. And rest assured I will be following you up. Orphanage trafficking, anti-slavery, intercountry adoptions, defence spending, AUKUS implementation and Liberal Party gender reform. I am more determined than ever to finally realise genuine gender reform in the Liberal Party. It is absolutely well and truly beyond time, but I will have more to say about that. In conclusion, I leave this place with great sadness, but also with immense gratitude and great pride. I know who I am, and I remain true to my values. I know who I am as a woman and as a leader, and I have confidence in my abilities. I'm a much better and wiser person for the sum of my experiences in this place. And I thank the people of Western Australia and the Liberal Party of Western Australia for the greatest honour of my life. I look forward, I really do, despite the tears, I look forward to the next chapter of my service, wherever that will take me. Thank you. Yeah. I almost made it.
Senator Cash, I presume you're making a contribution. Senator Cash, you have the call.